So we're going to go ahead and get started, welcome back. What Ted and I have done in the past and wanted to do here today is just kind of get some thoughts going on what we heard yesterday and where we think the conversation will go today. And then we've invited Casey from the Future Music Coalition to join us up here. And he had some thoughts in particular regarding rights societies that I'll queue up for him in just a moment. Ted, what do you think?
I'll flip it back to you. How did you think yesterday went?
Well,
I play off you much better.
I said this at dinner last night, and I feel like there's, if this event is any kind of sign of what's going on in the industry, there's a lot of optimism, there's a lot of good things happening, but there's also a lot of new participants, and it seems to me almost more confusing than ever. There's this convergence of social media and technology and people from the right side of the equation and the label side of the equation, artists, and they're all in this huge melting pot that is the music industry of the future. And I think it's an exciting and great optimistic time. But also, it's a lot of getting to know your neighbors here that is going to set the industry of the future.
I think a lot of what we talked about yesterday was how important currently Facebook is to everybody's existence, and I think it was Jason Hershkowitz who said the integration of Spotify into Facebook was very good for Facebook. Mm-hmm. So I think that sums it up to a certain extent. I think everybody's struggling to figure out if the business models are sustainable. And we'll see where that goes. One of the things I don't think we talked about much yesterday, at least in the sessions I saw and the one that I was on, was how important location is in the social experience. So I hope today that is a little more part of the conversation.
So something else that was mentioned to me yesterday is, no one mentioned YouTube at all, and YouTube is so in yesterday's discussions, and it's so central to how music is consumed and distributed online today.
It is, but I think it's more utilitarian for people. I think you just go because you want to hear something. It's not based around a lot of social recommendation. It's not as much of a social experience as watching the timeline go by and seeing so-and-so's listening to something on RDO, your other friend is listening to something on Rhapsody, somebody else is on Spotify. There's that there's that continuum going down the side of your screen that is a call to action. I mean, I found myself listening to a lot more music that I hadn't listened to in a long time based on just, the social recommendation is really critical for me.
Yeah. But you do ask a lot of the younger generation today what they're listening to, and the first thing they do is they pull up their YouTube account and play a song from YouTube. They're not necessarily going to Spotify or Rhapsody to play you music.
That's true. Yeah. The dinner conversation was good last night. I don't know if we can touch on that at all.
Sure.
But we got into a really great debate on the issues around the use of your data on everything that you do online and your expectation of privacy. And basically, what came out of it to shorten an hour-and-a-half conversation is that there was a real call for transparency, just knowing in very clear language, if I opt in for this, what am I opting in for, and how am I being marketed to, how is my usage information being sold. And so I think that's going to continue to be an issue for the foreseeable future. The takeaway from that was, again, the younger demographic could care less what happens with their data, and I think an older demographic really wants to know, are they being exploited? And again, it was Mr. Hershkowitz who said, basically it comes down to if you're not buying, you're being sold, which really summed it up.
Well, let's bring in Casey. Casey, you're with the Future Music Coalition in Washington, D.C. I know you reached out last week and felt that there was a need for some of the things on your mind to be expressed here at the events during the rights segment in particular, that you didn't think that particular viewpoints were necessarily represented fully. So we invited you to come up and give us your thoughts.
Well, since I'm a super nerd and I over-prepare, I actually wrote down some remarks. So I don't know if you guys want to indulge me some lofty BS for a minute or two, but that might be the best way for me to kind of plow through some of the thoughts that I have. My name's Casey Rae-Hunter. I'm the Deputy Director for Future of Music Coalition, which is a national nonprofit education, research, and advocacy organization for musicians. I'm also a musician myself. I'm a small label owner. I've been involved in music one way or another for most of my life, which probably doesn't make me a very rare creature in this room. So I'll also add that I'm really good at words with friends. So if anybody wants to play me in a game of Scrabble, I'll take you down.
Alec Baldwin is in the lobby.
He's in the lobby. I wanted to thank Ned for allowing me to just have a few quick minutes to talk to you today. It's always an honor to be included in an event like Digital Music Forum East. You know, I looked through the program this morning, and I was just astounded at you know, all the folks that are participating. I'd love to tell you really quickly about our organization and why we're optimistic about music and the businesses enabled by it. For a decade, Future Music Coalition has participated in and facilitated conversations about music in the digital realm, always from the perspective of how the technological shifts impact artists. And that's the kind of thing that I really want to focus on right now. Obviously, there are pluses and minuses to the digital transition. Still, I think that there's tremendous opportunity, and that opportunity might be more abundant than some folks would have you believe. We've long viewed technology as an incredibly empowering force in the lives of musicians, provided that they have access to the technologies and that they can maximize the value from their rights in a way that makes sense for them. We still have a long way to go before we realize the full promise of the new digital ecosystem, but to achieve a functional, legitimate digital music marketplace that rewards creators and artists alike, we may need to take a close look at current structures and ask ourselves some honest and possibly tough questions about whether we're truly meeting the demands of the modern marketplace. And I know that so many of the attendees here are up to that challenge, and I applaud that. We think that the first place to start is to ask musicians, which is why we've spent the last 2 years you know, investigating artist revenue streams. And some of you may have heard about this work from my associate, Kristen Thompson, who spoke yesterday. Either way, I encourage you to check out money.futureofmusic.org, which is home to this ongoing research and analysis into how musicians are actually getting paid in the digital age. We do that work because we see musicians not just as creative ambassadors, but also small businesses and innovators, which is why when issues involving intellectual property are discussed, FMC strives to ensure that the voices of the artists themselves are part of the conversation, because they're stakeholders too. And I probably don't need to remind you that they're not a monolithic group by any means. There's no doubt that technology has upended long-standing business models around copyright, but it's also important to consider what these innovations have meant for creative expression and revenue. And I think that the social media you know, summit is the perfect place to talk about all of those things, so I don't really want to get into it too much because you're already more knowledgeable than I could ever be. One area of growth is digital performance royalties. And I'm sure that you're all aware that that's a statutory royalty. Now, the artist split, 50%, was extremely hard won, but it's increasingly essential to the overall revenue picture for creators. It's also important to the artist's creative team, and that includes labels, who rely on these monies to not only keep the lights on, but to invest in careers. It probably doesn't come as a surprise to the handful of you who know me personally that I believe that this framework could even be expanded to other digital uses. I think that could have the effect of allowing even more tech wizards to enter the music marketplace and even start competing to see who can create the best APIs and artist-oriented tools to drive even more value around the recorded music artifact. And even better if we can ensure transparent and equitable splits for artists. So that's my big fantasy. You know, there remains...
I have a dream.
I have a dream, right? There remains understandable skepticism that even legitimate digital distribution structures can be monetized at a level that would replicate revenue streams generated by physical goods. But in the midst of ongoing conversations about monetization for traditional industry stakeholders, we can't overlook the independent and niche music artists for whom access to the marketplace was historically restricted by powerful gatekeepers. The ability for these artists to reach potential audiences and participate in new revenue streams has been marvelously enhanced by the internet. Therefore, it's important to consider whether and how policies that relate to these technologies would impact the ability for musicians to access the marketplace on their own terms. We must embrace change, but we can't abandon the best of the current frameworks as we plot a course for the future. And I once again bring up the digital public performance right and its crucial splits for artists as a model that should not only be nurtured but perhaps expanded. One thing's clear to me, whatever solutions are sought or implemented, we have to take into account all stakeholders, especially the countless musicians whose perspectives may not always be best represented by trade group insiders in Washington, D.C. By listening closely to the voices of countless creators and arts institutions, all copyright holders, who are too often ignored in debates around intellectual property and monetization, we'll find a way forward and ensure a bright future for music for generations to come. That's the official spiel. Now I'm happy to go off the script. Thank you.
That's great.
Terrific. And by the way, Kristen is speaking later today.
Oh, well.
She's speaking at
that shows you how much attention I'm paying.
On the future panel on the artist revenue streams, and it looks like a very interesting report that you guys have come out with.
Yeah, it's it's a ton of research. Kristen is co-leading the team that's just been doing amazing in-depth interviews with artists, doing audits of select artists as well, and also crunching the data from a survey that was very wide-ranging and included more than 5,000 musicians and songwriters.
Terrific, terrific. Well, listen, we have a pretty packed day today, so should we...
Let's get this party started.